Everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to the Searchcast, the ultimate podcast for marketers who want to have authentic conversations about the world of digital marketing. My name is Shane Hampson, and with me today is JP Garbaccio. JP, want to say hello?
Hey Shane, how you doing, man? Nice to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, super excited. The world of SEO is always changing. The month of March has been crazy. This week
Mm,
alone, we've had tons of volatility in the SERPs and Twitter, or I'm sorry, X is ablaze. Reddit's a big focus. So we'll talk about that. But before that, tell us a little about yourself. How long have you been doing SEO?
yeah, I've been in digital for like plus 7 years now, but full time SEO like plus 5 years.
Right on.
So yeah, when I started in digital, I was sort of like a writer. I was kind of finding my feet. I was a strategist, a brand strategist kind of thing. And then when I realized actually there's data attached to this whole writing thing, I think that like really when the world opened up for me. So yeah.
So in those, 5 to 7 years, how has SEO like changed since then?
Hmm. I mean, sort of in the beginning, and obviously I think this is dependent on learning, like as you learn SEO, because I think in the beginning you start and you think it's one thing, and like now when, looking now 7 years later, it's completely something different. But I'll try to be objective about it in the sense that I think we've moved from what SEO was, which is more simple. I mean, I still remember a point where, especially my link building days, when I was working with some really like black hat link builders, we could rank CBD sites and crush them, like just using like spamming guest posts. Guest post, we used to set it up. Guest posts, tiered links, PBNs, boom, 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 and then like the CBD site would just take off. And then it felt like that was like around pre-pandemic, and then it felt, like around there was a big switch when Google started cracking down, and it got a more, in depth. It started moving towards NLP entities. Now we're like looking at a lot more complex factors, and now it's just a whole overall experience where it's like UX, and just basically the customer journey, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. It's almost like history repeats itself to some degree, right? With Black Cat link building back then, and like word spinning and
Yeah.
SEO nuke, right? And then now we in today's world in 2024 we have Google Bard and ChatGPT and AI generated content, and a lot of it is there's kind of parallel paths there, right? Because if you think about what um, the language learning models do, is that they kind of just scrape the web and they regurgitate the best
Mm.
information they can find. So I think that's super interesting. But yet we get cracked down on black hat link building, and Google's kind of flip flopping when it comes to, is AI content acceptable? Yes or no? Their official stance versus what John Mueller might say on Mastodon or X, or what Danny's saying on X. Yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
it's a conflicting message.
One thing that'll never change is like the cycles, right? Like the cycles that SEO basically always seems to go through, and Google saying, no, don't do that. And then it's like, actually, that's the thing you should do. And then when they're like, do that thing, you're like, no, I should definitely not do that thing, because it's almost like they set you up and then 8 months, 12 months later, they try to catch you. But it is what it is. Yeah.
So my rule of thumb, and I don't know if this is like 200 IQ or 100 IQ, I'm not sure, but I always go with what Google's investing their money in versus what they say, right? So if you think of, EAT, it was EAT for
Okay.
the last 5 years, and then all of a sudden in 2022, it's EEAT. And what is that extra E? It's experience. What does AI content not do well is replicate that experience.
Mm.
So, your background as a writer, and I'm sure you're pretty good at putting experience into there. Do you have any tips for, our audience on how do you incorporate experience into your SEO strategies and your content?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I'm probably going to oversimplify it, but I think like having experience is just about building a brand. And I think being present. Like I don't want to go into the technicalities, but I have like isolated a bunch of patterns that basically, they can track like recognition and entity of like certain terms. And I know that's being built into like a repository somewhere that Google's storing, like algorithmically or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I mean, I could give you like a laundry list of tips, but on the technical side, but I think like really simplifying it is just build a brand, be present, be in lots of different places. And if anything, I mean, if I could give one solid tip, and I think, I've seen some people doing this well, is just make sure that your schema and like that, how that describes you on the internet, anything related to your own on website or your consistency across different publications where you're present, that needs to be as consistent as possible. Like that's what makes a true expert, right? You're cited the same in many different places consistently by many different people in a field. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Schema plays is going to play such a huge factor, and I think
Mm.
schema is like one of those things that's been around forever. It pops up and like these like little niche bubbles that come up in the SEO world. I remember back in like maybe 2018, 2017. Remember voice search was like the next new wave, and there's all these crazy predictions that by 2020, 70% of people would be using nothing but voice search, and schema was the way to do it. And then it kind of fell off for a little bit, I feel like. And like when it comes to talk tracks, when you read online publications and LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But I think with AI, I think schema is like going to be is another one of those boom cycles, which is cool to see. But I know
Mm.
also, schema impacts different various ways, different niches of SEO differently. And I know you have a strong background in e-commerce. Do you think schema plays equal importance in like e-commerce versus like a franchise kind of company or retail or a medical practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, schema is huge. I mean, it's like and I'll just sidetrack that with like whole, some Sir Tim Berners-Lee about moving like towards a semantic web. I feel like that's where schema fits nicely into this conversation because it's the language that machines talk, and AI will like basically help us bridge that gap. But anyway, like I think when it comes to specific websites, for e-commerce, it's huge because the way you label your categories, your products, the way you put that information in, that will all be crawled eventually, and then it's going to be obviously registered in the SERP. I don't know how the SERPs are going to change. I can't predict that, but I have a hunch that we're moving more towards like an economic Google, like as informational content becomes more sort of automated through AI, they still need to have an edge. And I think like that's why we see things being introduced like product carousels and SERPs that are like scrollable from left to right. Experimentation when it comes to sort of ecom type CRO things that actually exist in the SERP. And schema is responsible for injecting that information there because Google, as you said, Google's a business, they have priorities, and crawling the web is very expensive from a resource perspective. So if we can make it as easy as possible for them, they're going to reward us basically by saying, cool, we're not going to burn all the server time and processing time by basically trying to do this. So why don't you just make it easier for us, talk our language? And I really believe like that's where we're going to start seeing a lot more exposure and sort of visibility for results that get schema right that way.
Yeah, what's cool too is schema's always being updated, right? Since I've been doing this for over 12 years, and schema was not limited, but somewhat limited back
Mm.
then. Where now there's just so many different verticals of it, right? So yeah, it's I think again you invest your time where people are investing their money, and I think schema is definitely a safe resource.
Yeah.
Speaking of resources, and kind of where the conversation jumped from is AI, this broadcore update. I think we talked offline a little bit. You have some really creative ways that you use AI. Maybe not so much for content, or maybe you do. But
Mm.
what kind of ways are you leveraging AI in your current day to day?
Yeah. AI is, I treat AI like it's the most intelligent, like 7-year-old I've ever spoken to. Like it's like a savant. It has this brain. It's incredible. If I need to code something, I will ask AI to help me code it. If I don't understand something, I'll ask, and naturally a very curious person. I love learning about things, but you don't know what you don't know. So what I'll say is I'll just like query ChatGPT and I'll be like, I want to achieve this. Um, is that possible? And then usually the response is, hey, yeah, that's possible. You could do it using AppScript or Python or whatever the case may be. So I use it to write me help code. When I'm using ChatGPT for the engine, I like to use it for data analysis because it's quite fast, the way that it pushes things into the data frames and stuff. But sometimes when you're doing like 100K rows, I need to do that locally with a Python script. And then I'll use AI to build that script and I'll just run it like locally on my computer. So I treat it as the thing that's smarter than me that I still have to guide. But I've used it to train, I've trained it to write like people whose style I really like online, that I really respect. I've used it to create images and stuff like that. Um, but it's my assistant, it's my helper, but I won't let it do my work for me. So yeah.
Do you use ChatGPT and Google Bard differently?
I've, yeah, I mean, my experience is mainly with ChatGPT. I've not really experienced much with Bard. We are, sitting on the UK side. Sometimes the rollouts from Google are a bit slower, so I think that you guys do get that more. Um, but I've been using ChatGPT specifically because of the API. So like that's a big thing for me, and I like querying the API. So yeah, I can just say most of my experiences with ChatGPT. Yeah.
I find myself using ChatGPT, kind of like you, like an assistant, and for
Yeah.
actual data compiling with Google or with Google Bard, it's more like I'm kind of curious just to see what they're going to spin up when I ask a query. So I'm
Mm,
using more like a search engine rather than, yeah, like someone to help me just day to day minuscule tasks that would just take time. But I think it's also interesting too. There's a website called AppSumo. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
mm, yeah, yeah.
basically they sell a bunch of softwares for like lifetime deals for real cheap, and a lot of them are AI based, and it's really fascinating just to buy a couple of them a month and just tinker around with them. And most of them, they're basically just leveraging the API and then rebranding
Mm,
it, in their
mm-hmm.
little software. But it makes it easy, for anybody out there that is overwhelmed by ChatGPT, but AI is the future, maybe even the present, to some degree. I recommend looking into some of those tools. There's some of them are real cheap, like $39, $100 for a lifetime access, and there's some cool ones.
Mm.
There's definitely some cool ones out there.
Well, that's a really great tip. Thank you. Like, I'm actually on here and I see a lot of tools that my friend uses. So I'm going to definitely buy some of these actually.
Yeah. Absolute is not a sponsor, by the way. It's not a plug. It's just helpful information, right? That's what it's about.
Yeah.
One question I like to ask SEOs is like, what is your elevator pitch when someone asks, like, what do you do for a living? How do you explain it?
I tell people I dance with Google for a living. Yeah.
Love that.
That's what I like to tell girls. Uh, yeah, you know, um, I say like if you saw it on the search results, people like me probably put it there. And yeah, I don't know, that definitely intrigues people, and I think that then we start the conversation where I unpack Pandora's box, and then their eyes glaze over, and they get bored, and they walk away. Um,
I just do a form of marketing. That's all I tell them. If they want more,
yeah,
they want a deeper dive, we'll go there. But the SEO it's getting bigger. What's your
yeah.
prediction? By what year do you think people, like the average person that you meet at a happy hour or a mixer, is going to be like, oh, I know exactly what SEO is? More common than not.
Uh, Maybe not in the next 5 years, I don't think. It depends. It depends. I'm thinking about like places I've been and I've literally just no one's ever really understood. I do just tend to tell people I work in marketing, and then when they're interested, I explain it a bit more.
Yeah.
To us, it's huge, right? But to other people, it doesn't even exist. Like, and I think like I live in this little bubble where I think, oh, just SEO everything. Yeah, man, to be honest, in the next 5 years, I still think people will still be asking me, so what do you do? Like, yeah, so
Is that like Facebook? What is
it,
that?
yeah, they're like, so is that like you put the things at the top, and I'm like, no, those are the paid ones, and they're like, so but okay, but then it's free, right? And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way.
the the conversation about SEO, although I think it is getting more and more popular. I think there was a study that came out in was it 2023, and kind of like a
Mm,
State of the Union SEO. I think I forget which publication puts it out, but they put one out every year, and I think demand for SEO was like up like almost 100% year over year. There was like an all time high with job openings in SEO, and shout out to people like Nick Leroy for SEOjobs.com, building those blocks in the community to help SEOs
yeah.
find jobs and connect it with businesses that need good SEO. So I think it's cool. I think there's also a scary portion of it where I don't think SEO will ever die. I think it's only going to get
Mm,
stronger. But the more and more AI that comes in, I think there's going to be some sort of potential overlap where people just may never know what SEO is because there's going to be so many businesses that are going to do SEO with AI. They might not ever have
mm,
success, but they can check off the box if they don't have understand the value of it. So
yeah.
speaking of the value of SEO, what are some things that whether you have I know you do consulting, I know you've been agency and in house, it all comes down to the same question. You have to build value every month to kind of have that staying power. What are some tips you have for driving that value to whether it's a client or a stakeholder or whoever it might be?
Mm, yeah. The golden question, right? The golden question. I actually just finished Product-Led SEO by Eli Schwartz. Shout out Eli Schwartz, another
Shout
great
out.
SEO. And I love that book because it basically just discusses this entire question. And he speaks about, how the paid team has always got budget, but like the SEO team is scrambling and trying to speak to engineering and marketing, and it's just like a bit of a mess. Yeah, to simplify it, I usually tee it up like this. It's at the end of the day, I really don't like talking about traffic. I know traffic is like the top of funnel and revenues at the bottom, but like it has to be about conversions and revenue, and then using the data to show like how organic contributed to that. So because GA4, because it's kind of messy now, we have to look at first point, midpoint, last point attribution. So if I can say organic is an introducer of 75% of your conversions, let's make sure we understand what attribution is. This is what I say to the client. You say it's coming from paid, but if organic actually introduced that as an informational query and then they checked out via paid, we know that conversion came from an organic starting point. It's so one, first point introduction. Two, how much does organic actually make up your total users and your total conversions? Because in e-commerce, you should be aiming for around a 40 to 50% split of just organic pushing conversions. The other channels should contribute that because like as CPC goes up and Google defines that cost, it's only ever going to go up. It's not going to go down. So if you basically have a massive third leg that your entire sales strategy is leaning on, which is PPC, it's going to be difficult for you to justify that and run your business as you move forward. So I think, how does organic introduce this traffic? How much money, what's the actual dollar value of that traffic? And then how do we understand really what attribution is doing towards the end? And I will say another very important point, shout out to Andrew Holland as well, who I love speaking to about this, is SEO is a brand building tool. If I can prove to you that doing SEO has actually grown your brand, you are now in the process of building a real brand, gaining organic direct traffic, right? Which is the holy grail of traffic. Like I want those people knowing my brand, coming back, buying my stuff. I wouldn't even need organic if I had like all my direct traffic. So I know that's not a clear answer, but I believe the answer is somewhere within all of that. And when I analyze the website and I look into the data, I create a narrative for that person to understand.
So to recap, you're saying that SEO should take 100% credit for all the paid search conversions because it started there first. And I'm just kidding. No, but I think it is. I think it's super important, right? You should have a
Yeah.
holistic approach to digital marketing, and SEO is going to both be able to drive conversions from first attribution and last. But it also, if you think about blog traffic, most websites get 60, 70, 80% of all their traffic from blogs. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have a really good paid search counterpart and they're retargeting and remarketing and building those audiences, it absolutely starts with organic. So it's
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to SEO, it's an ROI, or ROAS, or whatever you want to call it, improving that value. It always comes down to dollar and cents. But if you can talk about CPA or CPL as a holistic approach rather than just by channel, since you're targeting both anyways, I think it is a really smooth journey.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you think?
It's
Go ahead.
go on, sorry.
No, please.
No, I mean, I was going to say that like that's such a valid point. Like cost per acquisition and lifetime value as well. Like we need to ensure that organic will only help us achieve a better CPA over time. And so yeah, we need like that's where we're really going into marketing science and proving that. So yeah, but that's a whole nother kettle of fish. So let's not go down that avenue.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend literally the whole weekend talking about how do you get a client to commit to how much is it, what's the average cost per lead, or what's a lead worth to you, right?
Yeah.
What's your close rate, and in some verticals it makes it easy. There's really good softwares behind the scenes that can track revenue and job bookings, but not every
Mm,
vertical has that, so it becomes it's always theoretical, right?
yeah.
So I guess in the nature of the SEO world, it depends.
It depends. And I wanted to say that it's every business is different, every client is different. I think sometimes you'll find a lot of clients don't even understand their business, the way that we see their business. So trying to explain that is hard, but yeah. it's just every business is different. You have to see it as its own little island.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you're clearly super knowledgeable, right? What are your goals for 2024? Uh, on a personal SEO level.
Hmm. Um, yeah, so I'm not committed to it, but I paused my master's degree last year. I'm thinking of picking it back up in September. So it is in computer science, so it's highly technical. I've spent the beginning of this year completely committed to data science, app script, basically learning a whole bunch of technologies that I can use to make my workflow more efficient. And then like I'm building my own toolkit using AI and Python. Like, hey, I need that tool. I'm going to go build that. Hey, I need this. I'm going to go build that. So I'm like, I'm just doubling down and just investing all my time into my own skill set. I think like personally. From SEO, I'm reading a lot about entities, semantics, strategy, like enterprise level thinking, like how can we frame this thing that we do in a way that the person at the party will understand, right? When they say, "Oh, what do you do?" And it's like, "No, okay, this is what I do. This is why it's important." So being able to have that conversation where we don't just discuss SEO and tech. But outside of that, I think on a personal level as well, when I'm not studying and trying to learn and stuff, I'm doing some consulting on the side. I love helping people audit their sites, particularly e-commerce, because it's just really fun and changing all the time and quite technical. So yeah, studying and learning, and then where I can, helping other people and doing some consulting and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, if there's anybody listening that wants to link up with you for some consulting, how do they reach you?
Yeah, you can just look me up on LinkedIn, JP Garbaccio, and I'll have a link there to my website. I'm still working on it, but we can put in a contact form. But I'm actively just putting content out there about the things I look at, things that will probably be relevant to, your business if you're in e-commerce and, other different types of businesses. So yeah, check me out there. If you have any questions, hit me up with a DM, reach out to me on my website. I'd love to chat to you. Like, even if it's just a conversation, if you need to be pointed in the right direction, love talking about it, love helping people out. So it's not a big deal for me.
I love it. And please, everyone, follow JP on LinkedIn. He's a great follow. You had a funny post. I got a chuckle. I think it was a meme, but you basically kind of like you signed a 12-month contract, and 3 months in, it's like, oh, this isn't working, right? And
Yeah,
it's Vince McMahon like, you know.
yeah, it's my
But
favorite meme. Yeah.
what makes like the best SEO client?
Ooh, I was gonna do a post about this because I was speaking to my account manager about this, right? He's like, "Oh, do you want to work with someone who knows nothing about SEO and you just come in and you just like blaze it? Or do you want to speak to someone who's like highly technical and like, you can speak their language and you guys can geek out and nerd out and stuff?" And the answer, which I'm still trying to solidify, but I believe is correct, is I want a client who knows enough about what I speak about to understand, so I don't have to put in the leverage to waste time and try to understand that thing, but know that they trust me enough that they will take my advice, right? And also really need someone who's committed to the process and has a long-term way of thinking, because I don't want to have to work with a client for 1 year and then, ChatGPT comes along and they say, "Oh, all these people are doing this ChatGPT thing," and then it burns out like we've seen in the last 3 days on LinkedIn where people are posting conversations they had with their clients and my traffic's gone down. It's like, no, like, hey man, I know what we're doing. Sometimes it's not always easy to explain, but if you listen and you trust the process, we have seen amazing results. Think of it as an investment, and I'm here, I'm your guide, and we're gonna get success together, basically. Yeah.
I think you speak for all SEOs. I think that's a great that's a great example of the ideal client. One thing
Yeah.
that's important for me is I like to ask every client that I take on board is what does a successful SEO campaign look like to you 12 months from now,
Hmm.
and you make them
Hmm.
answer, right? Because if it'll tell you
Yeah.
a lot, right? Fortunately, we're fortunate enough that we're deep enough in our careers where we can be a little selective with who we take on as clients, right? Where early in the
Hmm.
career, like a $200 a month client, it's like, yeah, I just need clients. Let's do this thing. I'll give you
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
where now you can be a little more selective, and you can kind of spot right away the people that are just going to be unrealistic with expectations, and it's
Mm.
okay for clients to be demanding, right? They're paying you
Hmm.
a good amount of money. I have a heart for small business owners, so this is like the same money that
Hmm.
they're going to use to spend, on their families, food and education and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So you need to make the most of it. But there's a difference between being demanding and unrealistic, and I think as
Hmm.
much of it I think it's probably equal blame between whoever's selling the SEO to the client and the client what they want. Sometimes it just doesn't align from the beginning. You're kind of doomed from the start.
Hmm.
So, my advice would just be have those conversations early. Don't be afraid to lose a client because it could end up being, just a negative thing. Your reputation gets slanted online. You don't want those, a toxic email chain getting published or all that kind of stuff. So, uh,
I think you answered that question better than me, but I 100% agree with you. I think it's about expectations. Uh, it's really just being honest about expectations and standing your ground and just like saying, this is what you can expect from someone who's done this for several years. Um, Educating them, I think, is also a big one. And vetting clients is huge because someone's going to get a bad client. So is it going to be you or is it going to be somebody else? So, yeah.
absolutely. And that's part of agency culture, right? It's just they have a dedicated sales team and they're on commission and they need to make money and especially those end of the month clients. I think as every SEO person's like cringe meter goes up a little bit. Like, what did we just sign on the last day of the
Yeah.
month, right?
Yeah, yeah. And what did we sign them for? Like, oh my gosh, we can't do this.
You're like,
Yeah.
the proposal I sent out to you to sell was $10,000 a month. Why does this one say 3,200? I'm like, why did the numbers
Yeah.
look the same?
For the same amount of work. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, you have some background in both agency and in. Hey everyone, just a quick note. JP and I kept talking for about another 30 minutes, but it wasn't until after we stopped that we realized that the recording was corrupted. My video and audio had stopped. So we're going to do a part two coming soon. We're super excited about it. Thanks for watching episode one. JP's a super smart guy, and I'm so looking forward to having you guys hear the rest of his insights in part two. Stay tuned. Thank you.